Greetings, stranger. I am sorry to have missed you at the performance tonight. It was quite the spectacle. Andorans love their tales of heroism, and what could be more heroic here than fighting your way into the fallen fastness of Dis to reclaim the infernal contract that binds the soul of the one most dear to you? An absurd task, certainly, yet one elevated to the apex of evening entertainment through its absurdity. And as with all great shows, it did get me thinking. Do you know how to summon a devil? To cajole one to do your bidding and emerge from the encounter with your soul intact? Or more realistically, to spot the signs of a summoning ritual and disrupt it? We are in Andoran after all. Talk too loudly about conjuring devils around here, and you will attract much unwelcome attention. Still, do you? I thought not. It is not a story the Andorans would tell you. But I am not an Andoran. Very well, be seated and listen carefully. But I should warn you, the process is infused with evil, and should not be undertaken lightly. Those who bargain with devils always get their just deserts in the end. With that in mind, let's begin. There are, in essence, two methods of summoning devils that do not require special artifacts or circumstances, and both are performed in dangerous rituals. In true Asmodean fashion, the safer, proper route, which we will discuss first, also happens to be the one far beyond the reach of most mortals. It also happens to be the one with intrinsic safeguards against a catastrophic outcome. But when dabbling in the affairs of the outer planes, what more could you expect? I speak of the ritual of planar binding, which is used by those with mastery over the arcane or occult arts to create a brief vacuum in the cosmos and compel a designated extraplanar being to fill it. Specifically, of course, I refer to the ritual of devil binding, which is the variant used to capture fiends from the pit. You see, there are many extraplanar creatures in existence, and the ones shackled by adamantine will pay no heed to warding diagrams wrought in cold iron. Many lazy ritualists have met gruesome ends at the hands of their own summons as a consequence of this foolish error. But I get ahead of myself. Before you begin the ritual, you must first assemble the components. Such a powerful display of magic demands the participation of at least 4 additional casters, and you must ensure they are willing to follow your instructions, or you will compromise the ritual's integrity. This is doubly true if you personally lack the knowledge to lead the ritual's complex chants and invocations, and second the role of primary caster to another who is more qualified. For many rituals, such outsourcing matters little, but for any ritual of planar binding, this can be a perilous decision, because its success results in a sentient creature more interested in your powerful hireling than yourself. Regardless, if this is your only option, take every precaution that they do not sabotage your efforts. Among the secondary casters, 1 must be familiar in the crafting of protective wards, 1 must be skilled in the subtle arts of negotiation, 1 must complement your own knowledge base, and 1 must support the weakest among the others. Moreover, be warned that you cannot forsake the secondary casters in a planar binding ritual, as doing so always results in the vacuum being filled by some eldritch horror determined to obliterate what remains of your senses. So I hope you have dependable allies. Once all the casters are gathered, you must supply the one responsible for the creation of the warding diagram with suitably resilient materials, and they must distribute these evenly around the diagram once it has been perfectly etched in a manner appropriate to the kind of being you are calling. Thus, for a ritual of devil binding, you will require an absolute minimum of 12 gold pieces worth of silver dust sprinkled across the internal perimeter of an inverted pentagram, the symbol of Asmodeus, desecrated by hurtful metal. If done correctly, this should prove enough to bind any devil kind up to the strength of an imp for long enough to bargain with it, but anything stronger will break through these feeble bonds. Summoning more powerful devils is possible, but exponentially more difficult, and requires much more silver. The pinnacle of such a ritual would be to summon a pit fiend, which would require 400 golds worth of silver and, of course, a mortal of legendary power to channel the magic. The caster responsible for creating the warding diagram can choose to forsake this duty without compromising the integrity of the ritual, and indeed choosing to do so is often advisable for favorable negotiations with the most proud targets, as being compelled to appear in a binding ritual is inherently humiliating. However, this always comes at the cost of protection, and nothing would then prevent the conjured entity from unleashing its anger onto those responsible for its brief capture. Note that even if you were to forsake the protective diagram, you would still require the same number of casters, for the magic would remain equally potent, though you would not need to spend any gold, merely a single copper piece for the chalk necessary to etch the inverted pentagram. Each caster must stand within the circle looped across each vertex of the pentagram, with the primary caster positioned at its base. Then the chanting can begin. Performing a ritual of devil binding requires 8 hours of uninterrupted work from every participant, and trust me when I tell you it is exhausting. The language of the ritual is naturally infernal, so speaking the tongue fluently, or being under the effect of magic to achieve the same, is quite useful. I will not utter specific incantations here, only the wisdom that each kind of devil has its own variant sequence of invocations, and they become more complex for more powerful beings. The culmination of this foul work, if done successfully, is a sort of directed vacuum within the pentagram. It is not a literal vacuum, of course, but metaphor is the language of the esoteric. In a best-case scenario, the casters will have attuned the parameters perfectly, such that each summoned creature will function as a plug for the empty interplanar space, and will find itself unable to leave for quite some time, perhaps even up to a whole day, weighed down by its own nature. A more likely outcome is that the vacuum will be shaped poorly, enough to call the being, but not enough to bind it for any significant length of time. Failing to tear the space inside the pentagram at all, meanwhile, will result in nothing more than wasted time and resources. Worst of all, though, is to tear the space in the wrong direction, and summon instead some horrific extraplanar beast, totally unaffected by the ritual's wards. This becomes easier to do as the intended target of the binding becomes more powerful, for the work concurrently becomes more delicate. So be warned, do not attempt such magic unless you are certain of success. That said, I should note that even if the ritual is performed successfully, the target can still fail to appear if it succeeds in an attempt to resist the caster's collective willpower. Celestials and monitors will typically answer a binding ritual's call only if overpowered by one, but luckily for the budding devil binder, fiends seldom dismiss the opportunity to secure mortal souls. Thus, rituals of fiend binding, including devil binding, are the most reliable within this family. On the other hand, only now, after the ritual has been completed, does the real work begin. You have summoned a devil. Congratulations. But unless you have done so perfectly, you do not have time to rest and recover from your efforts before entering into negotiations with one, for it will surely have overcome your binding magic by the time you awaken from any slumber. Thus, tired and spent, you must now persuade it to accept some bargain. Herein is where your true peril lies, for devils always demand one thing: your soul. Everyone knows that. Except it isn't quite true. Or rather, it is only partially true. Devils do love their infernal contracts, which are formal, powerful, thoroughly evil documents entered into by mortals desperate, foolish, or mad enough to sign them, frequently using their own blood. It is true that these contracts do always come at the cost of the signatories' souls, but it is not true to say that devils will never negotiate other bargains. For the arts of Asmodeus are defined by subtlety and patience, and the rigidity that any other negotiating position would entail is beneath his wisdom. Thus, so long as your objectives are aligned with those of hell, you may indeed be able to enter into a bargain with one and conclude it with your soul intact, at least until after your death, when Pharasma's servants will judge you appropriately for your actions. In general, then, objectives pursuing lawful, evil, or ideally lawful evil aims may be negotiated soul-free, but other offerings must then take its place. Gold is truly a universal currency, and most devils will be readily placated with a suitably large offering that respects their inherent authority. Most will also be satisfied with substantially less should they determine that the demand's fulfillment would result in the spread of more hellish doctrines throughout Golarion. Be wary, though, of additional payments. Powerful devils may insist on the signing of an infernal contract regardless of your desires, and others may require your own integrity to be enforced in a Gesh ritual. The bottom line is that devils are intelligent beings, and you choose to summon them at your peril. Whatever your position, remember that you can never compel a creature to do anything more than appear before you in any ritual of planar binding. If you seek even greater power over such beings, you must invest in even stranger magics beyond the scope of this lecture. Now then, I stated that there are two general methods of devil summoning. Let us discuss the second now. Be warned, it is far more dangerous. This second method takes the form of another ritual known as the Infernal Pact, and it is simultaneously simpler and yet more complex than the ritual of devil binding. In the latter case, you enforce your will over the target, demanding its presence in the name of your own goals. But with the Infernal Pact, you instead prostrate yourself to one of the chieftains of the pit and beg for the temporary service of their underlings. The target of this ritual might be one of the 9 archdevils, one of the numerous infernal dukes, or indeed merely a powerful pit fiend or similar member of devil kind whose common name you know to invoke. The magic of the Infernal Pact is significantly easier to learn and work, and for the secretive Diabolist, it also comes with the benefit of not requiring any secondary casters. However, there is one glaring problem. You must be a devil yourself to cast it. At first, this requirement appears completely preclusive, but true Diabolists do not let anything stand between them and devil kind. The resolution is obvious. You must negotiate with a devil and persuade it to perform the ritual on your behalf. This is no easy feat, and the intricacies of bargaining with the servants of the pit are even more delicate than usual when their personal reputations are the price of a botched performance. Nevertheless, if you succeed, it is often possible to begin a chain reaction of rituals, devils summoning devils, until you wield a veritable legion of hell's finest warriors. Of course, if you think that a mere mortal could accomplish this without furthering the goals of a powerful fiend in the process, or if you think that undertaking such acts can be done without damning your own soul to the pit after death, then you are delirious in your naivete. The simplest devil to persuade may be the imp, but be aware that they are one of the very few devils not granted an inherent understanding of the Infernal Pact, and so you must supply them with this knowledge. Thus, so long as you can acquire the appropriate divine lore, an imp familiar would be a pathway to many infernal abilities. It is also possible to attempt the ritual yourself, for in essence it is simply a means of contacting powerful devil kind. But be warned that I have never encountered an individual who achieved anything other than furious retaliation for the effort. Still, if you want to attempt the ritual in some dark place by burning black candles, be my guest. Well, stranger, I hope you are now better equipped to summon and bind devils to your will. Still, I urge you to consider the logistics of such an undertaking before you brave an attempt. Wizards, in particular, are prone to losing themselves in the mechanics of rituals, forgetting to comprehend the symbolism in the process. For example, if you desecrate the symbol of Asmodeus with wards of silver for a ritual of planar binding, how do you think the answering devil will be inclined to behave? You do not need to be an intellectual to figure that out. Now then, I must consult with a friend here, but tomorrow we will venture beyond Almus, continuing our tour of Andoran up the Andish and deep into its northern wilderness. Prepare yourself for an adventure. Well, until then.